Hello everyone, thanks for taking your time today to learn more about using Inline Manual. I'm Heather McNamee and I'm on the customer success team here with Inline Manual. So if you have any questions after this, you can tweet at Inline Manual, or you can also contact us at support@inlinemanual.com. So let's look at what you can do with Inline Manual. In this demo, I'm going to show you step by step how to create tours, tips, and tutorials that you can use on your site to guide people to complete tasks in your application. That's what it is at a very basic sense. But it also allows you, Inline Manual also allows you to segment and filter who sees what messages and how you're actually delivering that content to the right users at the right time. And then you can track how those tours and tips and tutorials are performing with our analytics. So we'll look at all these different aspects today. Inline Manual is self-funded and bootstrapped, and we've been working on this application for 4.5 years, so we have a lot of knowledge about this in this area, and we hope to be able to help you create the content that you need. So please do contact us if you have any trouble at all. Let's look right now at how our customers are using Inline Manual. Here's an example of a welcome screen here at Fresh Sales. In their application, this is a typical kind of first-time user experience where they're giving them users some messages about the service. And you can also see here a very seamless, customized look and feel on their tours. And they've done some nice work. The great thing about setting up this pattern, this welcome message for first-time users, is that you can continue that pattern with users as they use your application, and months later you can tell them about a new feature that you've added or an opportunity or some type of offer that's available. And so that's a nice way to start, and it's a great way to continue. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see where they've placed the widget, so there's always help available if anybody needs anything. Here's another example. This time Sales Seek, we can see that they've embedded a video in their welcome message. So you can embed media such as video and images, and again showing a totally different look and feel. So you're going to see a lot of variation in the design and style from what we show for our clients, because we have a lot of flexibility that way. You'll be able to use a style editor, or you can input your own CSS. Here we see another welcome screen, this time with Fresh Desk. And it's nice, they've embedded a picture of their CEO and a nice welcome message. And here we can see they've also put in a video, and they've got this video possibly hosted on Wistia, or you can use anything at like YouTube or Vimeo and add content like that. In addition to the help screens we've seen, the bread and butter and what you'll be doing mostly, possibly, is creating these walkthroughs where you're highlighting an element like this, and in order to take the next step, they actually click the element to complete that or trigger that next step and get their work done. And it's always nice, people as well, at the lower left-hand corner of that tip, you can see a little button that says Skip Tour. It's always good to be able to let people opt out if they want to. They're not ready to do that thing right now. But that's why the widget is helpful, so they can actually go back and get to that topic again. Maybe something they didn't think they needed at the time, they later want to find out. So we'll look here at how Crunchboards is using the widget. And of course they do have that welcome message, totally different look and feel again. And they're drawing their attention to users at the end of their tour to show them where the widget is. They've placed it on the right. You can see it customize different message there and a different look to it. And when they click that, it opens up what we call a widget, and has a list of articles available or topics. So they can click one of these topics and we'll launch them into a tour, or they can see an article based on giving them some basic information for starters. And the nice thing about this list is it is searchable, but it also, you can set up contextual paths so that depending on where you are in your application, you can have topics show up only in certain parts of your application or rise to the top in priority on that list. So you're giving them the right content at the right time when they need it. So this maybe has given you some ideas of how you can use Inline Manual. Many of our clients have started, as you've seen, focusing on the engagement ideas about getting users into the application, guiding them on their journey, and hopefully going from, say, trial to paid accounts, for example. So a lot of our customers start focusing on that first-time onboarding experience, announcing new features and putting in-app alerts, for example. But they start to get interested in how they can segment and target to different users, and then realize that they can actually do a lot in terms of support. So they're giving their users contextual in-app tutorials and help. And the nice thing about helping people in context is it's keeping them in the application. They're not downloading a PDF and following steps that way. They're not reading a manual, or they're not being pulled out into a training day, to go back to their desk, scratching their heads and wondering, okay, wait a second, what was I supposed to do and how is this supposed to work? It's very specific. It really helps them learn by doing. They're following on a specific task to get something done and helping themselves out in the context that they're in. So let's look at a demo application right now. You've got some idea of what these things look like, and I'm going to introduce you a little bit to some of the terminology, and then we'll see how these are built. So we're here at our demo application. In the lower right-hand corner, you can see the widget is available. And we have, as you've seen in the other examples, a welcome message. So we're giving people some options. They can say, okay, I got that, and dismiss the tour entirely, or we can click a custom button and start the tour. So here we have them their attention directed to click an element to advance the steps. And you can also see here I've got a dimmed background. This is done with a backdrop. It's going to focus their attention and show them to click something. They can't click anywhere else in this case except for dismissing the tour. The only thing they could do is click the element that's highlighted to advance. There may be cases, though, where you want to highlight elements and you don't want people to click on things. So here we have a backdrop blocking off most of the screen, and then we put a cover on the backdrop. And this cover is not allowing me to click anything there. The only way I can advance it is by clicking this next button trigger. So there may be cases as well where you want to have more than one trigger. We have the next button there to advance it, and we've given these people multiple options in this case. So we've highlighted multiple elements, and by clicking any of these, we'll go to the next step in the tour. And so what's interesting about this is, the reason we might do this is because in this case, maybe the user doesn't want to cancel this thing or close this thing. They just want to advance and find out what happens next. So you may want multiple triggers, and you may even want multiple destinations for those triggers. If they take this action, you may want a different response, or you may want to take this action and skip ahead to another part of your tour, for example. So that's why you might use multiple triggers, and I'll be able to open this up in the authoring tool and show you how that looks. And next, we've completed our tour. Fabulous. The nice thing about it, you don't have to put an end on your tour, but it's very gratifying when you've completed something. So when you're designing your tours, you may want to think of people completing something, having a piece of work done, and then making sure it's clear to them they got their job done. Right, so let's look at what else we have in the widget. We have an article. So this is different, and instead of launching a tour like the other link did, this one's launching some notes. They're showing up directly in the widget. I can format this any way I like. I can put in images or video. And in this case, I can add a button to launch another tour. So say, for example, I have some release notes. We have a new feature. We want to walk people through our new feature, set something up or configure something that's available. And when I click it, nothing happens. So this means we have to actually build it in order for this to work. So let's look at what we're going to build today. We're going to create a welcome screen similar to all those ones you've seen so far. We'll create step-by-step tour by highlighting specific elements, prompting the user to click the trigger and move to the next step. Then we'll congratulate them. So they've done such a fantastic job. And finally, we'll add that link into the article, and you'll be able to connect the dots for people. Before we can get started creating our content today, the first thing we need to do is install the authoring tool. Go to the help and support section on our site and follow the link to install the authoring tool, which is a Chrome extension. So the first thing you're probably wondering is, if we have to use the authoring tool in Chrome, does someone have to play it in Chrome? In fact, no. You only need the Chrome extension for authoring, and the player is a script that gets installed on your site and it will work in any browser. So just during the authoring time, you'll use the Chrome extension. All right, so let's start with this demo and see how we can fix that broken release note link. So here I am. I'm going to close the widget and open up the authoring tool in this case. And what we'll be doing is adding in a new tour. And the first thing we'll do is create a new step. We'll ask people in the step to click on a specific link. I've added some text, and I'll go over and select the element I want them to click on. And in order to advance the next step, they have to click the selected element. So this is a click trigger telling them to go to the next step. Add in the next step, which I have to actually expand this myself so that I can actually assign the element here. And select that and say. Now this is really specific, I suppose, in this sense. I'm being very methodical, telling them to click and click. It could be possible that, to start the tour, you could just bring them directly to their destination. So let's go to that destination, and we can add in a step, for example, that will actually redirect them. On this third step, we'll go to the miscellaneous panel, get the current path, and this will make sure to redirect them. So, essentially, I'm kind of creating extra steps to make it more interesting for you guys, but you may just want to redirect people on a step. In this case, in this step here, we're going to ask them to fill out their username. And then we'll add another step, which is to add the API. We'll go back here for a second and look at how this works. Right now, we don't have any trigger advancing this to the next step. So we're going to add a trigger that when people click into the step, the same thing we've used in the other examples, they click on the element, it will go to the next step. So I click on it, and it should bring us to the next step. And step 4, we'll do the same thing. When somebody clicks on it, we'll go to the next step. And the next step in this case, we'll tell them to click submit. You can edit any of the content here with this WYSIWYG editor. You can also put in your own HTML and CSS. And you can input in multiple languages. Here we have it configured for English, but you could actually have multiple, it actually supports multiple languages as well. And as we've spoken and you've seen already, you can embed images and you can embed video. In this case, you can paste in the URL and be able to put your video in there. Oops. Okay. So now we will add our final step, which is the congrats scored a screen here. And we can end it. They can actually end it with this end button. This is, again, another thing you'll be able to customize, and you can change the text there, for example. All right, so now we have a new feature tour appearing on our list here in the authoring tool, but I'll close that and refresh and open up the widget and see that our new feature tour is there. Fabulous. Of course, it's not loading completely. Take some time. Going to do command refresh sometimes when you're using the authoring tool. It takes some time for the content to appear. Okay. All right, here we go. It seems to be working right now. So I click the widget, select the tour, and start following it step by step. All right, so here we can see I start typing and it's advancing, which is fabulous, but it's actually obscuring the display. I can't see it. So users will not be able to move that directly themselves. So what we can do is in the authoring tool, we'll open that up, go to edit the tour we're working on. I'm going to skip ahead to this step here, and I'm going to change the position so that it's over to the left. And I'll do the same thing with step 4. I can actually move it so it's over to the top right. If you're having trouble because of the positioning of the authoring tool as well, up here you can change the placement of it. I've ticked it over to the left, and now I can set this step, add the API creds, to the top or to the bottom right, so it won't obscure the next step. Cool, so I'm going to close the authoring tool now. I've saved my changes and refresh. And it could take a little while, again, to see the changes. Go here to start our new feature tour. Forms, click here, enter your username. There, that's better. I clicked refresh and then I could see the changes that I'd made. Here we go. And now this isn't a real application, so when I click submit, nothing's going to actually happen. Had I done something, it would have gone to the next step, of course. So we've actually created this tour and we've done some things to set it up. Let's add it now to our release notes link. We want to add a link to this button so that when we click on it, it launches the new feature tour. So open up the authoring tool again, and I'll bring this over here to the right. Go to my release notes. And the article here in this example is just like I said, you can edit anything, you can add anything you want in here. You can use the WYSIWYG editor, you can add in your own HTML if you like. And in this case, I've used this custom button link here, and I'll double click on it to add a link. So in this case, I want to add a link to a specific topic, and I'm going to link to the new feature tour. Click OK. So save. I have saved it, I have refreshed it, should be working now, yep. But as we've seen, if I close the authoring tool and command refresh, do a hard refresh, it may take a few minutes. There's caching before the change appears. Let's see if it's working. Not yet. So here I've actually come over to Safari, so I'm in another browser where I haven't cached this tour, and I'll be able to see how my work is going. It also proves the point that you can use this in any browser, you can use it on your iPad, you'll be able to access these tutorials. And here in the widget, open up our release notes, and sure enough, the tour is starting step by step to draw us through. Now, I could actually improve this tour, as you saw before. We could actually add in a backdrop so that someone can't click and suddenly get off the tour. And so let's go in and see how that's done. So here I am back on my site, open up the authoring tool, and edit our new feature tour. And what we'll be doing is adding in the backdrop to control where people can click. So that's done under the backdrop panel. Turn that on and you can see now you can't click anything else except for the element that's been highlighted. And you can check what elements you have highlighted on the Elements panel. It shows you what you have. Sometimes you may have multiple elements that can act as triggers. And here you can see when they click, it goes to the next step. If we want to have backdrops throughout the tour, we would just add that for each one of the steps. A nice thing you can do as well with the backdrop is that you may want to prevent people from clicking, but it may be strange to obscure the entire screen. So in that case, you can override the appearance of the backdrop and change the opacity to 0. So we've got a transparent backdrop and it won't get in their way, basically. We'll look at the next step as well. We can do the same thing, turning on the backdrop and overriding the display of that. Same thing here, we probably want to put on the backdrop and you could change the opacity in this case, just keeping with that being consistent. But you also can turn on the cover. Now, it doesn't really make sense in this case because we actually do want people to click this button, but just to prove a point, with the cover on, you can make it so they can't click anywhere. You may want to just let them do something like click next or click end, for example. So I'm going to go back into my backdrop and make sure to turn that cover off so that they can actually submit and get to the last step. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of what you can do with the InlineManual authoring tool. And you may want to change some things on your site, just taking this to the side. We may want to change the widget text, what this actually says, and the way it looks. And you may want to do things like, for example, change what these default buttons say. Maybe instead of end, you may want it to say finish. Let's see how to configure that within the site dashboard. So here we are. It's landed us right into the topics, and I can see the topics that I have already added to the site. I can also make topics visible or hidden. So in this case, I may want to have the new feature tours I've just added, but maybe not expose it in the widget, only have it available through that link. And I can also add topics that I have from other sites, so I can test things out in a dev site and add them to the live site. And I can also change the order of the topics here. Let's look at some of the ways we can configure the look and feel and the content on the site as well. So we have these player appearance settings, and we can change the look of these buttons by using this point and click editor. But you can also use CSS. So you can actually put in your custom CSS and completely control, and that's how a lot of our customers are doing this, or they're using their own CSS and making it look any way they like. The other thing you may want to do as well is change the default text for buttons like end or the InlineManual widget button here. And to do that, under player languages, we're going to add an English translation. So what we're doing basically is translating the user interface. The widget currently says at InlineManual. We're going to change that to say tutorials. And the end button currently says end. We're going to change that to say finish. And save. And here we can see that the widget name is updated and we've customized the site. So let's look at what we built today. We built a walkthrough which responds to user actions, for example, on buttons or element triggers. We also then added a link to that walkthrough in an article in the widget. Then we looked at some configuration of how to configure and add topics. We looked at how to change the design and change the default text. What's next? We're going to look at optimization. We're going to see how to use segmentation to get the right messages to the right people, how to auto-launch content, and then how to monitor your progress with analytics. And here we are in our dashboard. And under people, you can see we have people tracking set up, and we're pulling in some information from our demo site. We just have one user so far. But the nice thing is with this information, we can personalize messages using their name as a variable. We can also use information about when they were first created or when they were first seen and send them the right messages at the right time. And that's what segments help us do. We've created 2 segments here. These aren't default segments. You create these yourself. You can actually create one that says, what about new users? And we'll look at new users who have been created within the last 2 days, or you could set that to be within the last 30 minutes, maybe. So we're going to send them a message, and we can't send them a message until we automate that. And that's where we're here under the automation tab. We're going to add a new auto launcher and select the welcome message to show for our new users and save. So your custom segments will appear there when you go create it. You can set the messages that you want, and then you can make sure they see it just one time. And once they've seen it, you'll know. And you'll know because you'll be able to track that in analytics. So in analytics, you'll be able to see what walkthroughs have been most successful, what people are working through. We can also show you the drop-off funnels. And here we can see over time, people are going through a certain number of steps, maybe getting stuck. And this gives us an idea that we can look at that content and see how to improve it. So that's really where the analytics can be helpful. Even if you don't use any of the people and segmentation, you want to see how your content's performing. So finally, what would you like to build with InlineManual? In the video, we touched on some of these points to show you that you can update the content quickly and there's no coding required, but there's a lot of configuration available to customize it to the way you want it to look and then to be able to track and see how you're doing. So if you're ready to get started, the next thing you have to do is install the authoring tool. If you get that far and you have any questions, you know where to find us. You can message us at InlineManual on Twitter or support@inlinemanual.com, and we'll be happy to help you.